Welcome to episode 65 of the Social Anxiety Solutions Podcast, your journey to social confidence. Now, my name is Sebastian van der Schrier, and I'm an ex-social anxiety disorder sufferer. And I suffered from social anxiety for a really long time, but thanks to energy psychology and the help of some brilliant therapists, I've been able to become anxiety-free and I now feel calm and relaxed in social situations. Now, on this show, I interview experts from both Western traditional psychology as well as Eastern energy psychology to give you the best tools to overcome your social anxiety. And sometimes I'm interviewing some friends, just as like I'm doing today. So today I'm interviewing Eric Winkler, someone who's at ease socially, and I'll be asking him a bunch of questions about mindset, beliefs, expectations, how to make friends, and how to have a nice social life, because I think we can learn something from that. So here's a bit about Eric. Eric immigrated from big city Taipei in Taiwan to a small sleepy town in Missouri, where he was the only Asian kid in school. Being a scrawny social outcast who spoke no English, Eric tried everything for years to fit in. He's a fan of travel, dogs, and he just had a Burning Man wedding. So, me and Eric, we met about a year ago. We were actually neighbors. We're both living in Bali, Indonesia, and we've since been hanging out quite a bit, working out, bulking up, having some man-only nights, and just overall having a good time. So I think this is going to be fun. Thank you for being on the show, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sebastian. Excited to be on.
Cool. So I thought, since you say that you were a scrawny little Asian kid, because this is, I'm reading out what you gave to me. um, And you did tell me a bit about that. Maybe kick off by asking, have you ever experienced social anxiety?
Yeah, definitely. I think so, anyways. Definitely anxiety or just feeling like out of place.
Hmm.
Like whenever I'd say I went from big city Taipei to small sleeping town, Missouri, it's because, coming from, as an Asian, coming from a city where I belong, and there's a bunch of others like me to a place where in middle America where there is nobody like me and everybody looked different and I was literally the only kid that was different.
Yeah.
That was weird, and I didn't really speak English. I didn't really know how
Oh,
to
wow.
interact with people. Yeah. Oh, I had to ride the short bus because I went to an ESL school, English as a second language,
Hmm.
for a year. And short bus usually means you have learning disabilities, if not, other like handicaps. And so I was a short bus kid because I didn't speak English, which didn't help the cause at all.
No, my gosh.
And yeah, it was a really weird time. Like I went from, I wasn't like a cool kid in Taiwan by any means, but at least, didn't have this other kind of issue before of really not fitting in.
Right.
So yeah, it was weird. It was a really weird time in life. I didn't know who I was at all. I didn't know what I was doing.
How old were
My
you?
I was 10 when I moved here
Mm.
or moved to America.
Mm.
Yeah, so I had to take third grade over again, actually, and yeah, I was really trying to figure out who I was. I ended up getting into all sorts of different things. I started hanging out with a couple kind of other outcasty kids who were really into like heavy metal and skateboarding, and that's kind of how I got into all of those types of things as a kid.
Mm.
It was it was
You kind of
it was
found
my
your
friend's
groove
sister. Yeah,
in the
exactly.
crowd.
But Exactly. But it was a crowd of other kind of miscreants, I guess. But we all kind of bonded together. But it was
Right.
awesome
Right.
because we although we weren't part of the cool crowd, we had our own thing going on, and eventually everybody else was kind of looking at us like, oh, these guys are actually kind of original. They're
Mm,
doing their own thing and they're very against the grain, while everybody else was like having their parents buy them Hollister t-shirts and Abercrombie and Fitch. We were really into like Slipknot t-shirts and like saving money for new skateboards and
right.
going to shows.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. So that was that. English ended up getting much better. Like things kind of started turning at one point, like probably 4 or 5 years into it. But yeah, it was like I said, it's hard to fit in Middle America when you don't speak English and when you're a scrawny little Asian
I
kid. Used to
bet,
getting
yeah.
yeah.
Interestingly enough, I've worked with quite a few clients who have a story like this.
Yep.
Either they came from abroad and they moved to a different country, like typical story, in fact.
Mm,
Or a lot of people as well that they had friends in their previous school and they went to a new school and they didn't get their friends along and now they were outside of their comfort zone, and even that because they already kind of had a propensity to social anxiety or more vulnerability to social anxiety because of childhood stuff. Now all of a sudden they're in this environment and they don't know how to deal with it, and now they're misfits. They don't fit in, they can't talk to people, and whereas they're nothing was going on before, now they're in this new school and now they have social anxiety and now they don't have friends, and now they're like, uh-oh, I don't have friends, everyone's noticing that I don't have friends, this is not good. And then it gets worse and worse and worse, and it just kind of starts there for quite a lot of people. So good that you found something that you could where you could kind of fit in, right? Like the
yeah.
skating and the music, and that's good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it wasn't easy. There was like a lot of I don't know, I used to get in like fights all the time with kids and all of that. And I think that kind of bonded me with these other guys as well because they were kind of in that same circle of like troublemakers.
Right.
And so I guess in some way of being like a bit of an outcast, then labeled me a troublemaker. And that's where like all of these kind of rebellious heavy metal skating, going against the grain activities came in.
Yeah.
And that's where it all bonded together.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Because there's also a particular, not that I necessarily recommend this, but there's a particular status that comes with getting into trouble. Like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah, when I first went to middle school, um, it was cool to get kicked out of class. So I got myself kicked out of class within a couple of days, and now it's like, oh, Sebastian got kicked out of class, and that's then the story that goes around. It's like, oh, he must be badass, right? And then you
Yeah.
get a particular reputation, which can be helpful, right? It's
Right.
interesting how that works
Yeah.
with status, yeah.
Yeah. But that's also kind of like a little bit short-sighted in some ways too, isn't it? Like for me especially, I was kind of, I would get in trouble and all of these things, but then I kind of became like the kid that parents warned like their kids about,
Right.
It was like so it worked to an extent, but then like you at some point I also had to kind of reinvent myself later on in high school because I didn't want to be the troublemaker kid,
Mm-hmm.
and that's even harder to get out of.
Yep.
And I didn't even really get out of that in high school. It took me until like after college, really,
Yeah.
when my friends' parents saw me, doing better things than I was doing,
Yeah.
for them to kind of accept me and realize that I wasn't that kid anymore, growing up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know if it's like I don't know, I don't think that's maybe a recommended technique to be getting in trouble and doing crazy things, but
Listen to Eric. Tip number one: be a rebel.
right.
Yeah. Plus, you get into trouble at some point. It's fun in the beginning, but then when that becomes your shtick, and you get in
Yeah.
trouble all the time, yeah, you almost get kicked out of school, and it's not good. Plus, it's a way of,
Yeah.
you're kind of seeking approval, and that's not good to start with. Anyway,
Well, well,
yeah.
yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
want
I
to
think
add
there's
on to that?
also, yeah, well, I mean, like I think like definitely later on, I mean, you can also kind of see where a lot of people do that in other ways, like in kind of self-destructive patterns, right? Like you can kind of see where like people would want to involve themselves in like lots of partying and drinking and this and that. In some
Right.
ways, that's like kind of the troublemaker thing, and then you become like the party guy, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's like
I
in many
drink the
ways the
most, I take
exact
the most drugs, and
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and
not
really you're
good.
like creating like that facade for yourself at the end of the day. And,
Yeah.
we all know people who have done that or been that person ourselves at some point. And
Yeah.
again, it takes a bit of time to reinvent yourself and, become
Right.
somebody else,
Definitely.
and so it's strange.
Because what is quote unquote cool in middle school or high school, like up to age 16, is very uncool when you're older. Right?
Yeah.
It's the opposite.
The idea of getting into a fight now,
Yeah.
I would curl up and
Right.
just cry if
Yeah.
I ever got into a fight in public. I would be
Yeah.
so embarrassed.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So let's see. Mm, right. So let's talk a bit about mindset. So when I had social anxiety, there were all sorts of thoughts in my mind of things that I was worrying about. Oh, what are they thinking of me? Oh, what if this person doesn't like me? Oh, what if I do something stupid and I embarrass myself? Oh, I'm gonna meet this person for the first time. I better make a good impression, because this impression is gonna last. And if I mess it up, then I'll forever be, all this kind of freaking nonsense that makes you totally crazy.
Yeah.
Coming just from deep insecurity inside of myself. Um, what do you think that other people think of you now?
Mm.
And
Yeah,
is
that's
it
a good
yeah,
question.
is it even something that you ever consider?
It's funny because I'm not exactly sure if I think of what others think of me. I think about how I want others to think of me more so than anything.
Hmm.
It's one thing, like for me, it's one thing to have somebody be like, "Oh, Eric, he's the fun guy or whatever." Though that to me, especially lately, hasn't been much on my mind. Whereas I want to project like a certain image onto other people now. Like I have this thing where I want people to, see me as a successful entrepreneur and these types of things. And that's actually been driving me crazy more so than like actually what people think.
Hmm.
Um,
At least it's
eh,
within your control more, though. I mean, the other thing is totally outside of your control. Here, you can put on
yeah.
some nice clothes or show up in the right places, or talk a big game or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's I think when I was a bit younger, I cared a lot more what people thought of me. Especially when especially like when I was going in college, I really wanted people to see, I was majoring in the right things that was going to be successful later on.
Yeah.
In high school, when I was younger than those age, I don't think I had. I wanted to create a more rebel image, as we talked about. Later on, I wanted to create a more positive, successful, this guy is going places type
Right.
image. And I think I was probably quite good at doing that. Now I think I'm craving that kind of same thing, but I want to be recognized. I have like a thing with recognition,
Hmm.
where I want people to recognize me for a certain thing, and that's probably like a mom thing because my mom is always comparing me and doing that type of thing, and
Right.
um, and yeah, so I guess it's for me, it's more of a validation than actually what people think.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I don't know if that answers your question,
Yeah,
but
sure.
yeah.
But does it make you feel insecure?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like in some ways, definitely,
Mm,
especially like where we live, where there's so many people who are like crushing it, doing what they do. And
mm,
I always wonder, like, how did that, like, what have they been doing that I'm not doing?
yeah.
And in some ways, that is like my anxiety, where I think of other people and I see them like working very hard and doing these things, and I'm like, well, how can I get there? And what am I doing that's not up to par? So that's kind of my biggest like anxiety and fear behind this whole thing, is
Right.
that I want to fit in, with like this community of people crushing it, where I'm like just starting to, my business and starting the things that I've been doing. And I see other people who are 10 years ahead, and I guess I'm kind of comparing myself,
Mm,
whereas, maybe I shouldn't compare my beginnings to their middles. So yeah.
yeah. But even though that's the case, um, and nice that you're comfortable and openly sharing that, right? I mean,
Mm.
it's also pretty common where we're from,
Right.
but where we're living. But yeah,
But this isn't probably something that I would share like honestly with other people, like besides you and maybe a couple other people. I probably wouldn't say this too much because I wouldn't really want people around to like hear something like this,
yeah.
So it's kind of a strange thing.
Well, thanks that we're getting the scoop.
Right.
Let's hope this doesn't go viral. Anyway, so yeah, but even though there is that insecurity, because I just want to point out to people listening to this, like, yeah, yeah, even though someone is comfortable socially, that doesn't mean that they don't have any insecurities. Because there's this perfection image that is projected onto other people, and people with social anxiety typically tend to think, oh, I have so much issues, I'm the toughest case around, and everyone else is perfect, look at them, they're always happy. And that's not really the reality.
Right.
Everyone has their own shit going on, and yeah, if you look at their Facebook pages, it does look like everything's perfect. But I know a lot of people that post a lot of nice things on Facebook, and they're not doing all as well as Facebook portrays it, right? So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I think that a lot of people are like that. They create their facade as well, and they want to portray their image. I know that, like, for me personally, um, I probably do it just for my own ego in some ways,
Hmm.
and like for my own validation. And I probably don't do it as hard as others. I'm sure I've seen a lot of people around who really try and create this magical, wonder, sparkly lifestyle that I always, when I chat with them, it is a little bit different. It feels different. I don't know if it really is different, but my intuition says otherwise.
The
So
Facebook
yeah, there's
versus the
definitely a lot
real
of that
life.
around.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, how is it for you to meet people? Is that something difficult? Is that something
Um,
easy?
it depends. It depends on what level of commonality we have. And I've kind of created a lot of I've made a lot of friend groups throughout my years, different friend groups from different interests. And I personally have quite a few interests, really bizarre things that I get into. I have like this a knack for going into some weird rabbit holes on Wikipedia and Reddit, where I'll just read for hours and hours, and I'll learn about some really bizarre things that ends up actually coming up really handy whenever I'm meeting people.
Hmm.
So like I'll start reading into like psychology. I'll meet like a psychology person like years later, and I'll be like, oh, so I read this thing this one time, and I'll talk about this thing that we have like these commonalities. I don't. I think the only time I really have difficulty is when it gets a little bit when people, especially here where we live in Ubud,
I know
when
where this
people
is
are a
going.
little bit too, yeah, especially when it's a little bit too. I don't know, spiritual and woo woo and things that are a little bit outside of my comfort zone. But for the most part, I haven't had a ton of problems meeting people.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like staying connected with them. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, well, where do we have this
Time.
commonality? What can we talk about? Yeah, and figuring out what kind of things that we're both into.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, I'm usually nice to everybody. Everybody's nice to me, but at some point, it's like a bit superficial. So
Yeah.
then, do I really want to continue this relationship with them or not?
Right,
So
because
yeah,
it costs time to develop
yeah,
deeper friendships, deeper relationships, and there is the superficial that is there in the beginning. You're not instantly gonna say, "So, tell me, what's your life?" Well, Pavlos maybe.
yeah,
But typically, most people don't initially say, "Hey, what's your life purpose?" or start talking about some deep stuff. Usually, there's the social thing as like, "Hey, how's it going?" and and there's the superficial, which kind of leads you into a deeper relation if you find that you have
mm,
commonality and you get along well and you just have that click with someone. Then just things go well from there.
yeah.
Um, What's that like for you? I was just thinking, who's that? Is that Gina or is that
Uh,
no,
nah, it's just some guy.
some guy?
Um, yeah, so what's that like for me? I find commonalities in all sorts of different ways with people. I just ask questions. I just love listening to what people say and do. Not so much. There's of course the how are you and what do you do, but I also love kind of asking like, so what do you like to do? And that
Yeah.
says a lot about a
What do you
person,
do
how
for
they
fun?
spend their time.
Mm.
Yeah, what do you do for fun? Like one of my favorite questions is like, do you like camping? Because for me, that's such like I love camping, and
Right.
for me, that says quite a bit about a person because I think that in a situation where just a few people go out into the woods and just like be away from technology and be away from distractions and starve your distractions and um, you're in a space where you can really get to know each other and be in a little bit of a hardship as well. I think that having a getting myself out of like kind of a nerfed lifestyle where everything is padded and everything is easy and food and water is just around the corner. It for me that has something very profound. So it's one of my favorite questions. Like, so like what do you like doing? Do you like camping? And it's such a strange thing, but it really works. I learned so much about people from it,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's just great. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, I think that really just, man, there's so many things nowadays that you can find commonalities with because we're all so connected. Like with the birth of the internet, like we've never been so connected, and so I think everybody in some level is connected. It's just figuring out what level of connection that is,
Mm.
and do you want to pursue that? Because I mean, I have some people that we are we could talk about marketing together because that's not what we do, but really like we are more connected through woodworking because I weirdly love like the smell of freshly cut wood and working with my hands and doing things like that, and those are like the type of things that we talk about.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It's
yeah, so it's just
yeah, it's a
like,
brilliant question actually when you think about it. It's like, hey, I'm into camping. Not many people are into camping, but I really dig people that are into camping for reason X, Y,
yeah,
Z. So this is just my question, you know? This is
yeah,
what I
it's
ask
like
people. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's like finding your tribe.
it's fantastic to see to get a feel for people, you know?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
great.
absolutely.
I also like what you said earlier. you know, I'm just nice to people, and people are just nice to me. It,
Yeah.
it's that simple, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think, I mean, you get what you put out into the universe, right? Like
Yes.
the more you put out the energy that, that you're feeling closed off, that you don't really want people to interact with you, things like that, you'll definitely receive that back to you. Like people can tell, like people can see that, and they can sense it. The more that you put out there that you're happy, you smile, even just a smile goes such a long way. And it's like, having a happy tone and the way that you look at people, even when you're not feeling happy, even when you're not feeling confident or, anything, fake confidence, fake, like happiness is better than no happiness or no
Right.
confidence. So you
Right.
might as well just try it. And I really think that's kind of how, like, that's where I started, like as a kid. Like I would just kind of fake it until I, became it.
Yeah.
And just, it worked.
Yeah, yeah. I'd say it works to a degree when you're very anxious. That becomes a
Mm,
bit more difficult. But what you say, definitely. I interviewed this girl once, like, 10 years ago, or maybe even longer ago, when I lived in South Africa. Did an NLP course, and we had to model people's mindset. So you had to think of someone who had what you wanted to have, and then model their beliefs and their behavior, and ask them all sorts of questions. And her name was Hermione. She was always happy, like, oh, but
mm.
super, like, so I asked, so what's the secret? Why are you always so happy? She's like, oh, and just gave me a bunch of answers. I'm like, why are you never not happy? She's like, of course I am. I'm like, what do you do then? She's like, then I just fake happiness to someone else. I give them a big smile, and then they're, happy back to me, and that makes me feel happy. I'm like, that is clever. I never
Yeah.
forget that. Forgot that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sounds like you just have an attitude or a mindset of curiosity and openness, and you're trying to figure out, all
Mm.
right, is this person someone that I want to invest more time in to get to know a bit better, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think asking questions and listening works the best whenever you're trying to meet somebody,
Mm,
because people love talking about themselves.
exactly.
The people just love, they don't get that opportunity for somebody to truly listen.
Yeah.
And so the more you listen, the more deeply connected they become with you. They're investing in you by giving you their time and sharing their lives with you. And so just ask a question, and just hear who they are. What do they do? What do they enjoy? Like you can even go into some deeper questions sometimes, like, well, what are some of the obstacles in these passions and pursuits that you're pursuing? And then, they'll even open up a little bit more and going into, well, like my biggest obstacle with camping is I don't have enough time. I don't
Right.
get to go enough. Like I don't, whatever it is. But oftentimes, it can go very deep very quickly without, you even really trying or prodding too hard.
Yeah. Awesome. And
Yeah.
so, what is it from your perspective that then creates friendships? What are things that you do in order to make that happen? Because a lot of people are like, okay, well, um, it never goes past the superficial for me.
Mm.
How do I get actual friendships?
I think there's a few different kind of pieces to that puzzle. I don't think for me, I don't know if there's like a surefire way of figuring out when a friendship becomes a friendship, but I know that going through something with somebody usually puts me in a
Mm,
in a deeper connection with them,
mm,
right? Like just going out to dinners here and there, just hanging out, like seeing somebody at a party once in a while and brushing past and saying hi and having like a 10-minute conversation. Yeah, I mean that's for me that's more of an acquaintance type thing, but sometimes I would, especially like whenever I moved into new cities where I didn't really know anybody and I really had to put myself out there, it was really awkward. When I moved to Denver in 2013, I didn't have a job, I didn't have anything. I just moved there, and one of the things I had to do is just meet people, right? And so what I ended up doing is like getting guys' numbers, which is a weird thing to do. Is like whenever I'm out at a bar, like having a drink and having a chat, I'm like, oh hey man, I'm gonna be doing something later on. You're more than welcome to join. Like we can go grab a beer or something like that. And those kinds of things, like kind of putting myself out there a bit, really helped solidify some friendships, or at least begin the blossom of it. And I think also keeping in contact with people is very important. Anytime I see something that reminds me of a friend back home or reminds me of a friend somewhere that I've met, I always send it to them. It doesn't matter how silly it is or how long it's been that I've chatted with them.
Yeah.
I always just like I want to maintain that relationship because you just never know. You never know what state they're in. You know, it makes them feel that they are important. It makes me feel like that relationship is real.
Yeah.
You know, so I think there's a bit of maintenance, a bit of putting yourself out there, which I mean, it is a little bit, it's a little bit scary, you know, because you don't want to get turned down and feel silly for inviting somebody to like, you know, come to my ultimate frisbee or come have a drink, and then somebody's like, no, man, I don't do that. And if that's the case, then sure, you know, like then that's not you're not being reciprocated a friendship, and maybe, you know, it's time to spend your time and energy elsewhere. Maybe, you know, it's just not the right time to, you know, facilitate that.
Yeah, yeah. And when when someone keeps inviting you and you keep saying no, you can, bet your bollocks that those invites are gonna stop in a pretty
Exactly.
soon. So if someone does invite you, say yes. Say
Yeah.
yes, go, even if it's not your thing. Go and
Yeah.
experience it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You
Yep. I'm
you,
totally
you
with you.
mentioned earlier that yeah, when I go with someone through kind of an experience, that kind of
Mm.
solidifies the friendship or it makes it go deeper. I definitely found
Yeah.
that to be the case as well. If you only see someone at Frisbee, for example, I've got the people at Frisbee
Yeah.
that I see. I'm like, they're friends or acquaintances, but I, if I see them in the city, for example, that's it's a short conversation. We're not hanging out outside of that, so that's not really a friendship. Like when and we I think we went for dinner maybe a few times, but that's then that's my frisbee crew, right? Or there's my soccer crew. And
Right.
but when you go to through different kinds of experiences, now it's like, okay, we went to this together, we did this together. And I think that also frequency of seeing each other, just
Hmm.
spending enough time, you just get to know each other better, and the
Yeah.
conversations get deeper, and you start to know more interesting stuff and figure things out. Like, when I figured out you wanted to be a politician and that you were in the army, I'm like, wow, that's a cool fact, right? That's fascinating. I
Right.
didn't know that, and I love that about friendships as well. I've definitely have been in many situations, having lived in so many different places where you got to start from scratch. Like, I love the period where friendships deepen and you actually get to
Mm.
figure out who the other person is. It's a cool
Yeah.
thing.
No, definitely. I think like seeing people in different lights, like seeing them in different situations, really helps. I think that's one of the reasons why like a family vacation is brings a family together. So, you know, like after the family vacation, no matter how horrible the family vacation is, you always have something to laugh about,
Yeah,
right? Because you see each other like
shared misery.
I don't, yeah, your shared misery, like that really helps. That you see each other in like in laughter, in struggle, in all these different kind of settings, and it really you start seeing the character of the people that you're surrounding yourself with. Same with friendships, you know, like the more you see your friends in different situations, the more times that they tell you about some struggles, and as well as their, you know, pleasures and positive things in their lives. You really start seeing them in different ways, and I think that creates a deeper bond between you because now you guys have shared all of these different moments together.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Perhaps you've shared, you know, a wider palette of emotions together, more intense
yeah,
emotions, and that's probably bonding as well, now that I think about it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So, when starting from scratch, meeting new people and that kind of stuff, you mentioned, yeah, it's been awkward. So awkward tends to be the enemy of the socially anxious. Well, I don't want to say social. From someone who experiences social anxiety, I don't want to say socially anxious person because we want to get rid of that stupid
Right.
identification. It's not helpful. So, so someone who experiences social anxiety, awkward is typically, that's the thing I don't want to experience. So, what's your mindset around awkwardness? Is it
Um,
okay? What happens when you experience it? How do you deal with it? Do you expect it? And so on.
I mean, honestly, I think that awkwardness is a part of everyday life in some way, shape, or form.
Mm,
Like everybody is going to experience it in some way, shape, or form. I think that whenever you're creating a new friendship, whenever you're meeting new people, it tends to get shown more, right? Like because you guys are kind of you're still trying to figure out where the frequency of the other person is.
mm,
So is it acceptable for me to be behaving like this while they're behaving like that? You're trying to see like gauge the other person. It's almost like whenever you're dating a girl, and before you guys have like gone like kissed or done, like it's before the end of the night and you're still trying to figure out where that other person is, and you have an idea of like you have this idea of what they expect, and you're trying to figure out like what that is. It's like, okay, should I be this type of gentleman? Should I open doors? Should I be more of a bad boy? Should I do this? And you're like, that's the same thing with building new friendships. And yeah, I tend to find myself in all sorts of like kind of funny little situations whenever I'm trying to meet new people, and I just have some go-tos. Honestly, I found that has worked, and that's probably different for everybody. But I know that whenever I came over to Bali, I would just ask people if they want to go on a ride. I'd ask people if they want to go to the spa. Do they play chess? Just some activities that I am comfortable with. I don't have to be the best at it. I don't have to be competitive. I don't. It's just something that I enjoy, I enjoy sharing with other people, and see if they want to share that with me. And in that get to know them more, and create conversation around it. I think the most awkward social situations is when you don't talk. Is like whenever you go to a movie and then you've spent 2-3 hours with somebody without even getting to know them a single, fact more. And
yeah.
I think those kinds of things are always a little bit, I don't know. I get more awkward about that than anything else.
Right. Right. And how do you deal with it when that awkwardness is there?
I feel like I just try to create some conversation.
Mm,
I try to ask them, especially afterwards when I can see, that no words have been exchanged. It's like, all right, it's time to talk about something, because we've got to get past this. Like I remember I went to a show with a few friends, new friends, at like a club to see a DJ, and they invited me. So I was like, okay, sure. But I mean, we were just in there having drinks, and it's fine. It's a very social situation. Everybody is there. It's a packed house. But we didn't speak. The music was loud. We were just kind of like dancing and doing like a two-finger kind of dance type thing. And in some ways, it was kind of awkward because you don't exactly you're trying to like jive with people and figure out if they think that you're looking cool and you're trying to look cool, and it's this whole thing. So I think afterwards it was just like, let's chat about what happened tonight. Like there needed to be quite a bit of conversation around that to kind of fill that void before. So I think it's just creating conversation. It doesn't really matter what the conversation is,
And it
as
doesn't
long
even
as,
matter what your question is, right? People are just
yeah,
happy to
exactly.
talk, and everyone wants to get out of that awkward moment. So,
Yeah.
ask a
And everybody
stupid
can
question,
feel
and
that.
people are happy that you asked the stupid question, right?
Exactly, because everybody can feel the tension.
Yeah.
It's never just you. Like for me, anyways, I can, and sometimes I'll even say it. I'll be like, man, that was heavy. Like, like it's a good thing we can chat again. I'm glad to hear your voice. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Excellent. All right.
yeah.
Let me see if I can think of any more. Yeah, okay. So basically, you meet people, you're curious about them, you're open, you ask your, hey, you want to go camping or do you like camping thing?
Yeah, or it could be anything,
Right.
really. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what about meeting people for the first time. Like people are even like, well, what do you say then?
Mm.
Kind of depends,
I
I guess.
Yeah, it kind of depends on what the situation is. I get introduced all sorts of people all the time from my girlfriend because Jean is very social, and so oftentimes I get to meet a lot of her friends, and so we're always going to dinners and this, that, and the other, and usually I have to just kind of sit there, engage the situation for a second, and figure out, where's this conversation going? What kind of person is this? Is this a more yoga, because she's a yoga teacher, is this person very into yoga and eating very healthy and this, that, and the other, which, I have some conversations armed in the back of my mind for, situations like that. Or is this, somebody that she used to go to school with and hang out with and, go to Glastonbury with or whatever it is, which, like in that case, I have some questions and stories armed around that. I think at some point, like I've kind of just created certain, different pockets, folders, whatever I want to call them, of, questions and conversations and topics of interest that I can just kind of pull up, which I can speak, which are open for conversation, and I can speak relatively intelligently about. And I think that in itself kind of helps those types of first impression situations. Um, but then again, it's not so much about like what is being said. It's just like the presence, right? It's being open and listening and putting out there like a good, happy, welcoming energy where people feel comfortable around me. Because ultimately that's what I want people to do. I want people to feel trusting, and that I'm not, just some Joe Schmo off the street that is sketchy in some way or whatever, or aggressive or anything like that. I think just putting people in a comfortable state is what works best.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. And so, what are your? I have two questions. Let me think which one I'm gonna ask, because
Okay.
let's do the other one. I might forget the next one, but so specifically, I mean, it's like so you meet someone for the first time. Um, what do you say? It is as simple as like, "Hey, how's it going? My name is Sebastian." Right? Or like, what do you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah, that's usually really just it. I'm just like, hey, what's going on, man? I'm Eric. Shake hands, give a hug, whatever like the social situation would be. And if we have just met, like say if it's just a complete stranger, that I'm meeting in line at a grocery store, whatever it is. Yeah, it's just a simple introduction. Maybe like a little bit of commentary about what's going on around us. Like if we're standing in line at the grocery store, it's just something I always try and crack some jokes about, probably long lines and whatever else that a grocery store setting would have. But it's really just, carrying a big smile, and that, it's a body language thing, right? And just being overall relaxed as much as I can. Sometimes it doesn't always happen like that, right? Like sometimes it can be a little bit anxious feeling
Mm,
because, especially if it's somebody who I perceive as maybe, I don't know if powerful is the word, but like comes off as like strong and, whatever that, like somebody with a strong presence.
right.
Have you ever had something like that? Like I've definitely
Sure.
met people that are like taller than me, stronger than me, better looking than me. A girl that's very beautiful that I kind of like. I feel myself stammering in some ways, and which is like it's not usually like me, but it does happen.
Mm,
But in those situations, it's again trying to remain calm and seeing the situation for what it is. And just introducing. I think like a good introduction and a smile goes such a long way.
yeah.
And it breaks a lot of ice. It breaks a lot of barriers. You don't have to have all of the jokes. You don't need to, like break the ice too much. It's just like just getting that first in with somebody can really go far.
Yeah, and even asking an obvious question, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, how long you been living here? Are you that's like the common question where we live,
Oh
right? It's
yeah.
like, so
Yeah.
are you living here? Because I want to know, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
just passing by, yeah,
Yeah.
my investment level is probably a bit lower
Right.
because you're going to be a
Yeah. Or
passing
some.
friend versus one that lives
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
I think one of my favorite questions for where we live is like, what have you been up to today?
Mm,
You know, because
there's
we
always
live in a place,
something, always
yeah,
adventure.
somebody's always doing something. Like
Yeah.
I went to a waterfall, I went to this crazy cool class, whatever it is. I love that because then I learned something new. They love telling me about what they did,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that also creates a bit of a bond between you, right? Like
Yeah.
that also opens up an opportunity for an invite to something that you wouldn't have maybe been invited otherwise,
Right.
or gives you something new. You know, I heard about this thing from this guy at the grocery store today, you know, and you can pass that on to somebody else and say, hey, do you want to come with me to that? You know, let's go to experience something new together and create that new bond.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great question to ask.
Cool, cool, cool. Let's see. I have a list of questions and I think I'm running out. Let's see if I still have a question. If someone goes All right, so we kind of spoke about it a bit earlier already. So when you come to a new place, how do you go from having no friends to making friends? And I'll just quickly share. When I just got to Bali for the first time, I had one friend, but he was leaving in a week, and I was staying there for a month and maybe live there. So I'm like, all right, it's making friends time again, you know? So I'll go to different
Yeah.
meetings and stuff, but I'll set things up as well. Like I like playing soccer. Um, if I may humbly say so, I'm pretty good at it, and I I really love playing soccer. So I know that when I play soccer and I invite some people, I'm gonna have a good time. So I just I went to this co-working space. I put up a little sign, hey, reach out to Sebastian. If you want to join, we're gonna, and then I'm asking people around, say, hey, people I talk to, hey, by the way, do you play soccer? Yeah, oh, cool, because I'm organizing this thing and blah blah blah. And so then, um, Friday evening rolls along, and we have a team of 10 players, and it's a fun time to play soccer. And then it's like, all right, let's go for a beer and dinner after. Great. Everyone shows up. Two guys bring their girlfriends along, and at the end of that evening, four of them are from Lithuania, and in Lithuania they love saunas, and they've already found a sauna in Bali, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to the sauna tomorrow. You want to come?" I'm like, "Yeah, great." Next day we go to the sauna, and at the sauna we meet two more people, and it just grows really quickly if you just have that open mindset, and like let's put myself out there a bit. Maybe nobody says, no, I don't want to go to soccer, right? But even if you just have one or two people, it can grow from there. Because typically, what I found as well, people are not on an island. So if you make a friend with someone, that someone typically has a social life of their own. And if that person you made a friend with likes you, he will introduce you to their social life. So it just takes a couple of friendships to hit gold and create a social life, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so what are things that you do or have done at the start of getting to a place to make friends or get people together or stuff like that? Because I know you've done certain things because I've been there, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, like for example, one of the examples I can give is when I first moved to Denver. I was the only. I didn't know anybody. None of my friends had moved there yet, and I ended up finding. I'm a big Kansas City Chiefs fan, right? So I like American football. I'm watching it. So I ended up finding this bar that plays a Chiefs game every Sunday when the team is playing. And I just showed up, and I ended up meeting all sorts of people who were from around the area that we share the same interests, and we kind of created this little, like a chief's bond, and decided that, hey, we should make this an every Sunday thing. And it just kind of snowballed into effect from there. And then they brought me on, they asked me if I wanted to play ultimate frisbee with them at Wash Park, and I was like, okay, sure, yeah, great. And then one thing led to another. We ended up going hiking together, and it just started growing a community that way. I know that when I first came to Bali, I needed to take a break from yoga and all of those things, right? It was a little bit too much, so I was like, you know what? We need a men's circle. We need a men's circle that doesn't talk about any spirituality things. We just need to have a guy's night,
Right.
whether that be camping or going out fishing or whatever. It turns out, we'd all just kind of sat around and had a couple drinks and just talked about man things. But that really worked. And it turned out that I wasn't the only one, right? So many people that were around were kind of in that same space, although most of them really enjoyed their day-to-day yoga practice and meditation and things like that, just as I enjoy it. But it's just we all kind of had that same mindset of we need a break, and so more people are out there than I thought that were on that same frequency as me. It's just putting that out there,
Yeah.
and that really worked out well. So yeah, so I think it's just like creating and facilitating a space that other people can enjoy, a setting with you, and making that happen. That's such a big thing.
Cool. Another thing I kind of want to point out for people, like, if you're not the type of person who actually puts things together, if that seems like a really big step for you, you can make it smaller by just looking for things that are already going on and then joining it. Like, I started going to Ultimate Frisbee, for example. I'd never done that. But I'm athletic. I like exercising, so I'm like, I'll give that a go. First time I go, I don't, there's one guy that I met before. The rest I don't know. So I'm not totally comfortable there. I'm also feeling things out a bit, and seeing what it is like, but I have a good time. I'm like, I'm going to do that again. So I go again. Now I'm comfortable. And I go again. Now I'm comfortable. I'm going to go again. And now I'm starting to meet people, and, it is interesting. And a couple of really cool, like one of my closest, some of my closest friends that I have now, that I met in the last year, actually come from Frisbee. And it's a free event that just showed up. By the way, Ultimate Frisbee is probably in most of the big cities where you live. Same thing a couple of years ago in Thailand. We had Chiang Mai Fitness, some dude that put together a fitness group. All right, 7 a.m. in the morning. It was crazy. 7 a.m. in the morning every day working out. Well, we go through that stuff. You meet there, you go through a challenge like what we described earlier. This is kind of an experience that you go through because this is a hard workout. Now you share some intense emotions. You go for a brekkie after, and you're starting to see each other more. You invite each other to go to the swimming pool or whatever it is. And you start to meet people. When you go to things that you like going to, whether that's a yoga class or whether that's, whatever, meetup.com, and you just go there a bunch of times, the familiarity will start to make things easier. It might not be comfortable the first time you go, or maybe not even the first 5 times that you go, but eventually you'll start to kind of become more familiar with the situation, and your brain will be like, okay, I can let my guard down here because I've scoped out the area. There are some certainties in place here. I can come more out of my shell, and I'm okay here.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say
Yeah,
so?
yeah, I think definitely. I think that's really interesting what you're saying, because that is very true whenever you're creating a space for yourself, whatever that space may be. It may even just be a restaurant that you're really familiar with that you enjoy eating at, inviting people to that space with you where you feel in command. And, you don't even have to be completely in command, but you're familiar with it. You know the space, you know how this place works. You can speak about it in some form of authority. And, I don't mean authority as in, I own this thing,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I know about this place. That little bit of confidence right there can really give you that extra push to get over that awkwardness of meeting somebody, because sometimes, especially if it's somebody else's first time at an event that you're going to, and you're the one explaining to them how it works, then you're the person helping them out. And
Exactly.
you've created a space for them to open up and things like that. So yeah, I think that's really important to have a little bit of repetition, having some a place that you're able to take other people and share. So yeah.
Cool. I have one more question, but I
Yeah.
badly need to go to the toilet. So give me a minute and build some anticipation,
Okay.
and I'll ask the question. All right. Give
All
me a second.
right.
Right on. So I thought maybe it would be fun since you mentioned Gina before, and I'll be interviewing Gina soon as well. That
Okay.
you share how did you guys meet?
Oh. So how did we meet?
Because wait
So
one second, because these two are just a really awesome couple. I love them, and they're really fun to hang out with, and we've gotten quite good friends. And they've been dating for 2 years or
two
so, and they're
years.
just a great example of people in love who have a great relationship, who have a great social life, and that are just happy people. So I thought it would be good to interview them, and I thought it would be cool to interview the both of them. And so maybe you sharing how you guys met is a good like
Yeah.
little anticipation builder for the interview with Gina.
Yeah. Yeah, so Gina and I met in India, actually. So I was in Nepal uh, a couple months before India, and I was doing a project there. And the project ended up kind of falling through because of some political stuff. And I ended up leaving Nepal. And then I got to India. So it was completely, I wasn't planning on going to India at all. I was supposed to be in Nepal for a couple more months, but this job kind of fell through. And so I ended up in northern India in a little town called Rishikesh. It's actually a holy city, one of the holiest cities. And it's a really cool, wholesome, nice, beautiful place, a lot of spirituality, all of these things, none of which I was really into at the time. I had just left Denver. This place I was at was kind of strange, as um, I had been partying a lot in Denver, and I was working a job that I didn't really care about, and I ended up just leaving and started traveling. And so I got to India, and I think it was by some divine intervention that I ended up there. And of course, because I met Gina there, I do feel like it was, but. Um, I was still kind of figuring out what I liked and what I was even doing in that neck of the woods. So, anyways, me and this guy from my hostel, we were walking around town one day, and we were just really exploring, but we were kind of looking for, a place to do a cooking class. And I don't know how serious we were about this cooking class, but we decided, we were gonna do this, and we ended up getting lost, and there was like kind of a jungly area, and we go up it, and we see this really beautiful looking like restaurant or a house or something. We weren't quite sure, but there was all these vines growing all over it, and it looked really like just magical and cool looking. And so we go up, and it turned out it was like a vegan cafe. And again, at the time, I was still eating meat and drinking lots of beer, and not very in a vegan place of mind.
Hmm.
But we decided to go in, check it out. And the vegan cafe actually was attached to this orphanage, and it's like a house for kids that were in trouble, like socially and whatever, and they learned skills of hospitality and chef like baking and things like that at the cafe, and the proceeds from that goes to the school. And so we'd show up, and again, I was still kind of not really into any of it. But when we walked in, I saw Gina sitting there. It was her and her friend, and the whole place is full, but there was one table right next to them, and it was empty, and there was two seats there. And we were about to walk out because, we weren't vegans or anything, but I thought, you know what, maybe we should just chill out for a second and have a tea. And my buddy Max was like, "Are you sure?" It's like, kind of pricey here, vegan cafe, this, that. And I was like, "Ah, no, that's cool, man. I'm like, I'll buy you a tea." So we sat down, and I was facing Gina, but I didn't really know what to say because I was a bit shy. I didn't quite know how to approach her. But like when you've seen somebody before, like we've met eyes, but I felt like I knew her, like I felt like I'd seen her before. And so I didn't know what to say, and I just was chatting with my buddy Max, and I was just saying, well, about this cooking class, we should definitely, take a cooking class. And I was saying cooking class like within earshot of Gina, hoping that she would hear it. And after me saying that we were going to take a cooking class about 10 times really loudly, like an obnoxious American, she turned to us and goes, "Oh, did you say you were doing a cookery course?" And I was like, oh, did you hear that? Oh, yeah, we are doing a cooking class. And so I actually somehow coaxed her into talking to me first. And so anyways, we ended up doing a cooking class together because I told her that it was going to be like a better deal or whatever. We needed 4 people to do this course, and yeah, it was maybe a little bit of a fib, but they wanted to do the course anyways. And then and she had just got off of a yoga teacher training in India, and she was on a bit of a life soul searching kind of journey as well. And they were talking about going to some other parts of India that I had never even heard of. But then I kind of convinced her and her friend that it was my plan all along to go to those parts. And I kind of just followed them. We ended up going to Dharamsala, to where the Dalai Lama lives, and went traveling, through very northern India. And then we ended up traveling for the next couple months together and really got along. And then, and afterwards, she left. She went back to England for a couple of weeks to a wedding. And we didn't know exactly if we were going to meet back up or what the situation was. But then on Christmas Eve, she sent me a message. She said, I got you a Christmas present. And I had no idea. I was still in India at the time. I was like, she's not sending me something, surely. I'm in the middle of nowhere. And she was like, "Yeah, open up your email." And the email was a itinerary of her flight coming back to Asia to meet me in Bangkok.
Oh,
And so, yeah, so a few days later, we ended up meeting in Bangkok because that's where I was going, and we've been together ever since. So
cool.
we've traveled around Asia. She's came back to the U.S. with me a couple times to meet my family. I've gone to Manchester, stayed with her for several months in England to meet her family and do all of that. And yeah, so we've been very happy since living here in Bali. And yeah, I think it's by far the best relationship I've ever been a part of. And hopefully I've learned so many things from this relationship, and yeah, we're gonna just keep continuing doing what we're doing and be happy.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to put that story in there because it's just nice for people to hear that it can happen like that, and it's quite synchronistically as well, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, I definitely know.
Yeah,
At
it's
least,
funny because
yeah. Go ahead.
because we're both like in this really strange part of our lives. We were literally just wandering around Asia, trying to figure our lives out, and we were both coming from different places, but all in all, we had kind of, in a lot of ways, given up on the thought of looking for somebody. Not forever, but at the moment, we let our guard down. We weren't. I wasn't. Before I was always looking for somebody. I was always, on the search, on the hunt, whatever you want to call it. But in that moment, in those few months, I had kind of dropped that and thought, you know what, I just want to experience life. And it was in that moment that I was completely free and open to accept, somebody to come into my life. When I was least expecting it, that Gina showed up, and it was the exact same thing for her. So yeah, so it's a great story.
Fantastic. Well,
Uh, uh,
let's end on that high note. Thanks a lot for sharing. I think this is going to be very beneficial for people. We covered a lot of ground, and yeah, this is going to be fantastic for people to listen to who have social anxiety. So, thank you mucho, and we'll hear from Gina next week
Sounds
or
good.
next
Thanks for
time.
having
Yeah,
me, man.
cool.
Yeah.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that. Just wanted to let you know that, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I'm an ex-social anxiety disorder sufferer, and I'm also a social confidence coach. I've been coaching socially anxious people for the past 8 years, and that's not your typical change your thoughts, face your fears, be mindful approach. I use energy psychology to help people become relaxed and comfortable in social situations. If that is something you're interested in, I offer free 20-minute intro chats where I listen to your story and give you a perspective in how it is that you can overcome your social anxiety as well. And if you look at some of the previous podcasts, you'll hear some testimonials from former clients who overcame their social anxiety, some in a couple of sessions, and the girl that I worked with was for a bit longer. You'll find out all the details when you go to my website, socialanxietysolutions.com, and you click on coaching, I think it is. So, all right, and next time you'll be hearing from Gina, Eric's girlfriend, which will be a lot of fun. All right, that's it for now. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.